You know how bad Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony bombed the other day? It bombed so bad that the left is blaming misogynist men for the fallout. I kid you not. We're going to look at some articles that have come out desperately trying to gaslight the whole situation. We're going to see what this obsession with victimhood is actually linked to. And make sure to stick with the very end of this video when I'll reveal how pathetically sinister victimology really is. You're not going to want to miss this. Greetings, patriots all across the globe. Dr. Stevie with you. Great to be with you as always. I am your Patriot Professor, helping to think better so you can feel better in these crazy and turbulent times. If you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. And you know what else I want you to do? I want you, like you should be doing every single day, stick it to cancel culture. And you can do that by clicking on the link below and supporting our friend Mike Lindell at MyPillow. You probably heard Walmart stores have canceled Mike's products from their shelves. And I think it's time that we showed Mike some love. As he's showing it back to us, he's offering us his lowest prices ever if you use my code Turley. So usually the classic MyPillow is $69.98, but now if you use my code Turley, you can get your own classic MyPillow for just $19.98. And gang, it's not just pillows, it's slippers, it's towels, it's sheets. So don't wait. Click on the link below. Get one for yourself. Get another for the patriots in your life. Let's support our dear friend Mike Lindell and get the best sleep of our lives in the process. All right, let's dive right in here, gang. One of the things that I like to do is suffer from my art here is I daily peruse not merely the legacy media websites, but I also go to the real ultra far left sites like Salon.com and Slate and Mother Jones and Vice and the like. And the reason I do that is precisely because, unlike their legacy media counterparts, these sites are actually quite open about how much they feel like they are losing. It's actually a lot of fun to read, to be honest with you, because I can't think of a day that's gone by over the last couple of years, frankly, where these sites weren't featuring at least an article bemoaning the fact that all was lost for the left. The right, the Trumpian right, is taking over, and there's literally nothing the left can do to stop it. And one of the most recent examples of this is an article I came across this morning at Salon.com entitled, "Our Summer of Misogynist Rage. Toxic Men Unleash a Wave of Violent Threats Aimed at Outspoken Women." The byline reads, "Backlash isn't enough to describe the abuse faced by Cassidy Hutchinson, Amber Heard, and pro-choice protesters." It's a fascinating piece that reframes the collective disgust that characterized much of the response to these women who were determined to have been clearly lying to us. That's how lying is generally responded to, right? With contempt. Much of which, by the way, was coming from women. That was most certainly the case with the scorn heaped on Amber Heard. But what this article does, as a number of articles had previously done, particularly with Amber Heard, is it recasts that very natural response to being lied to as nothing less than an orgy of misogyny, as one far-left activist disguised as a journalist put it. And frankly, at least for me, it's impossible to read these articles, and this one in particular on Salon.com, without recognizing how cringeworthy this attempt at gaslighting really is. And these writers are doing their darndest to try to turn what is obviously a massive loss into some kind of leftist version of a win. These women were scorned because they obviously lied, and the nation as a whole has dismissed them. And so these woke warriors on the left, explaining away their obvious defeat, do so by blaming that defeat on, you guessed it, men. Here's how this Salon.com writer puts it. Shortly after Cassidy Hutchinson finished her searing testimony that correctly painted Donald Trump as a violent but cowardly bully, desperate right-wingers tried to make Amber Heard 2.0 a thing on Twitter. The choice was a telling one, though not in the way the MAGA heads think. The abuse aimed at the former aide for Mark Meadows, Trump's chief of staff, who spoke before the January 6th committee on Tuesday, does resemble the harassment of movie star Johnny Depp's ex-wife. In both cases, misogynists launched an intimidation campaign to silence a woman. Not importantly because she's lying, but because her haters fear she's telling the truth. So you'll notice here, this author still recognizes that truth is a virtue. Truth is a virtue, and therefore lying is a vice. And vices are not to be approved of, right? Vices are to be condemned, not condoned. So we're at least operating with comparable basic moral frames of reference. But listen to how she perceives truth. Quote, "Now the whole country has been told about the petulant, violent, and fascistic behavior that Trump's inner circle goes to great pains to conceal. And Trump is reacting with the same strategy he used to sick the mob on the Capitol, winking at his violent followers, providing them a target for their rage, and trusting that they know what he wants from them." Not that Trump needs to be a rocket scientist to know his biggest fans happen to be the same people who fly into an incandescent rage when a woman speaks out against injustice. The heightened concerns about her safety compared to the older white men who have largely been witnesses to Trump's behavior is also a reminder that the Trump base has a particular hatred of a disobedient woman who happens to be young and pretty. Another reason they went straight for the Amber Heard comparison. So you can see here, Trump, for what's left of the woke mind, Trump is a symbol. He's a symbol of a misogynist electorate that hates women, and especially those who speak out against injustice. The fact as to whether what she actually said was true or not is irrelevant, because there's a much more important truth, and that is the truth of the oppressive patriarchy that still rears its ugly head over the lives of women. That is the truth we need to be focusing on, not the silly little details about grabbing the wheel and all that. It's the darkness of the oppression that continues to hover over tens of millions of women. And she goes on to decry how violence has always been a part of the misogynist patriarchy and light and blah, blah, blah. And as I'm reading this, gang, this utterly cringeworthy attempt at gaslighting all these feminist fails, I was so struck by just how radically pathological all this obsession with victimization really is. I mean, I've been studying victimhood and victimization for years now. And I'm absolutely convinced that there is a radical narcissism behind victimhood. Psychologists have long recognized that, right? People who suffer from narcissistic tendencies often play the victim for the purpose, of course, of manipulating others. Victimhood is actually one of the key symptoms of a narcissistic personality. And we've got to understand we are absolutely deluged with narcissism today. And this is because we as a society have turned our backs on the transcendent. Starting in the late 18th century, working its way out into the 19th and 20th centuries, our elites in Western culture, our political, cultural, university elites, largely embraced the notion that scientific rationalism was the one-size-fits-all solution to all of our problems. You're right, you know all the adages. All religion ever does is it causes war. It's inherently irrational, and science is the sole objective way of understanding reality, blah, 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 right? And so what scholars have noticed is that in the process of this, and this turning away from God and religion towards science as having all the answers, ironically, in order to find meaning and purpose for our lives, we ended up turning inwards towards the self. So today, the self is the default source of life and meaning for the majority of people in secularized society. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the American writer Ralph Schoenstein's article entitled The Modern Mount Rushmore. It's wonderful. He penned it a number of years ago, but it's absolutely profound in terms of what he observed. Listen to this. Listen to what he writes here. One day last spring, I stood before 20 children of 8 and 9 in a third grade class to see if any heroes or heroines were inspiring them. I asked each child to give me the names of the 3 greatest people he had ever heard about. Michael Jackson, Brooke Shields, and Boy George, said a small blonde girl, giving me one from all 3 sexes. Michael Jackson, Spider-Man, and God, a boy then said, naming a new holy trinity. When the other children recited, Michael Jackson's name was spoken again and again, but Andrew Jackson never, nor Washington or Lincoln or any other presidential immortal, just Ronald Reagan, who made it twice, once behind Batman and once behind Mr. T. In answer to my request for heroes, I had expected to hear such names as Michael Jackson, Mr. T, Brooke Shields, and Spider-Man from the kids, but I had not expected the replies of the 8 who answered me. Their heroes were themselves. It's sad enough to see the faces on Mount Rushmore replaced by rock stars, brawlers, and cartoons, but it's sadder still to see Mount Rushmore replaced by a mirror. This is the cult of narcissism that's absolutely pervaded our secularized culture. And what it's producing is a rampant pathological epidemic of victimhood, like we're seeing in this article from Salon, where you have example after example after example of women lying blatantly. But because they're women, any critique, any pushback against such lying is reinterpreted as misogynist abuse. This is the cult of victimology. But it gets worse, I kid you not. All of this accusation of violence and sadism against women that we hear spewed out from this author actually has itself a very, very sinister history. And Jordan Peterson is going to help us unpack that. But lest I forget, July the 4th is approaching, and it is time to show your patriotism, and I want to help you do that. Think about it. Has these last few weeks not been like Christmas, with all the wins that we beginning winning? Well, we want to acknowledge those wins. So what we're doing is we're having a special Christmas in July offer for the whole month of July in honor of July the 4th, the overturning of Roe v. Wade in celebration of our sold-out movie, The Return of the American Patriot. So as of now, when you buy 2 t-shirts, you're going to get another one absolutely free. Just simply use the code 1776. Click on that link below and get 2 for yourself. Get 1 for the patron in your life. They're going to absolutely love you. Click on that link below or go to store.turleytalks.com. All right. During my academic career, I supervised a very fascinating thesis on something called genocide studies. Okay, scholars have made historical acts of genocide an object of critical analysis over the last several decades. Now, we've unfortunately, of course, given the history of the 20th century, we have unfortunately had no choice but to study this horrific phenomenon. But one of the key precursors to the outbreaking of genocide is this overwhelming sense of victimhood. Genocide is historically broken out only after a belief gained in massive popularity that a group was being incessantly oppressed and maltreated and abused by another group. So Jordan Peterson's actually done a study on this connection that you can follow up with. And the notion here is that when enough people believe that there's an oppressive group that is abusing you and maltreating you and persecuting you, and that they're not going to stop, this is a permanent state of affairs unless we rise up and get them before they get us. That is a general pattern in genocidal studies, where mass murder and violence is often preceded by a popular sense of victimhood. And again, I couldn't help but think this when this author, this piece in Salon, just rips into these hysterics over violence associated with patriarchy. And she is so utterly clueless in the fact, the historical fact, that victimology has wreaked far more violent and murderous havoc on our world than anything you can pin on a patriarch. And so again, even in their attempts at gaslighting an obvious public relations disaster, as was Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony, even their attempts at trying to explain that away colossally fail, which makes you wonder how they can possibly continue being so woke. There's no way around it. In their effort to try to convince the world of their narcissistic vision of victimhood, woke leftists are ultimately defeated in the end by nothing less than the truth. Now, before you go, you will definitely want to check out my latest video I just uploaded on the J6 committee, utterly humiliated as their star witness testimony implodes. You know what I'm talking about, but you're going to love it. So make sure to click on that link, and I will see you over there. God bless.